Hello everyone, here is another completely unplanned video, and I was just sitting here and all of a sudden I felt the spiritual urge to do this video. So the topic for this is going to be, what is the purpose of the humans in their existence? So what are we here for? So in order to answer that, we need to understand what reality is. So I have established a whole bunch of fundamental facts in my previous videos. And so what is the reality? Reality is that we are spiritual beings first, and our soul lives in this physical body for a temporary period of time, which it could be a few seconds or it could be over 100 years. But however, it ends. The life of the physical body ends. And the purpose of us being on this physical earth is to cleanse our souls. That is the purpose of our existence. So, in this physical world, we are supposed to maintain our souls as sinless as possible. Because what happens is that when our physical body stops living, then our soul still lives and is actually eternal. Our souls are eternal. Then, this physical life is a test for our soul, which is encaged. It lives within our physical bodies, and depending on what decisions we make, what intentions we have behind our actions, and also what intentions we have that never materialize into actions, depending on those, then it determines the fate of our soul. So, we build our soul's future, or our soul's harvest, every second that we are awake, and also even when we sleep. But I won't go there right now, because what you dream actually depends in big, huge part on what you do when you're awake. So, but I won't address that right now. So, you build your harvest. So every single person's harvest is different, because no two people do exactly the same things while they live this physical life. So there is a duality to where our souls, where they end up. So a counterbalance scale, the old-fashioned scales that they put the weight on one side, like the grocer, the bread, or whatever it is you're buying from, food or whatever, they put the weight on one side and then they put the bread on the other side. That's a counterbalance scale. So if your good intentions are heavier than your bad intentions, then you end up in the proverbial heaven. Your soul ends up there. If your bad intention side is heavier than your good intentions, then the soul ends up in the proverbial punishment phase and the proverbial hell. it does exist. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It's scientifically correct that the reward and punishment system exists, and that brings you to, or brings this talk into, how do you cleanse your soul? Very, very, very simple. Be just. That's it. To everything. In your every intention, you be just. And there's a very good quote by Justice Thurgood Marshall. He said, I cannot define justice, but I know injustice when I see it. So we all know that. Our souls have been taught what justice and injustice is. We feel it in our hearts. We don't have to even think about it. Once you see it, once you are experiencing any event, you immediately feel a natural gravitation or a natural repulsion. If you are just to begin with, but everyone has it. Everyone is born with that balance, sense of justice and injustice, but how they are raised, what they are taught, either supports that or corrodes it. So it is possible, for example, for people to be brought up in such a manner that they think what is completely unjust is actually just. So that they think night is day and day is night. That happens. It happens frequently, actually. And it depends on the genetics, nature and nurture, or yin and yang, or town and country, whatever you want to call it. It depends on a person's genetics, which those genetics depends on what the parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, and so on and so forth did. So what their intentions were. So this is where the environment changes the genetic makeup. So the phenotype changes the genotype. Generally, the genotype determines the phenotype. Genotype is the genes. Phenotype is basically the outward manifestation of those genes, which includes the brain chemistry makeup, which then forms what one determines or deems as just or unjust, in good part. The brain chemistry and basically the biochemistry of the physical body. So the genetics are inherited from the parents. They determine how we look and everything about us, just about everything about us. And they also determine our thinking, our behavior to a significant extent. The other part is the environment of how we were raised as children, and also as adolescents, and also as adults. What type of environment, family environment and societal environment. So those genes are either supported or not supported. So the combination of that makes us. However, the soul has free will. The soul has its initial makeup, which is justice, and understanding of justice is embedded in that soul. Regardless of the genetics and regardless of the environment, the genetics and the environment never ever completely corrode the sense of justice of the soul. It's there. Sometimes it's there very minimally. Let's say 1%. And the other 99% is corroded. But sometimes, but that 1% is enough so that the person still is, the concept of hopelessness is a misnomer and non-existent, meaning that the person still has hope to reverse that through the original makeup of the soul. So the point being that the free will of intending justice or injustice never ever goes away completely. It's there enough so that generally speaking, there are very extreme exceptions to this, but generally speaking, I would say 97+% of the time, the person has enough free will left, even if the person's genetic and environment was completely wrong and it supported the injustice, that person's free will still remains enough for the person to reverse the effects of the genetic that one has, the negative genetics that one has inherited from one's ancestors, and also if it's coupled with the negative environment. So that's the worst case scenario. Negative genetics and negative environment. So the sense of innate justice of the soul has been corroded. It's enough of that good justice sense of the soul remains in the free will of the soul to reverse all of that. But the best case scenario is that the person inherits great genes and also has a great upbringing and a great environment. In that case, the innate sense of justice of the soul is supported and emphasized and amplified by both the genes and the environment. That's the second possibility. A third possibility is a combination of the two. So one inherits, so these are the two extremes, and it's a spectrum. So negative genetics, negative environment is one end of the spectrum. It's the worst possible scenario for this physical existence. Then positive genetics, positive environment is the best case scenario, and it's a continuum of, it's a spectrum that every point is a continuum. So it has infinite points, kind of like a needle, like a dial, like a needle like that, from 0, let's say, to 180, and you can have 179.99999 infinite, or you can have 0.000000, a whole bunch of zeros, but there's a 1 at the end. So, and everything in between. So all of these are possibilities, but our free will remains ours, our souls. So being just is always possible. That's the conclusion. And that's how we are supposed to achieve our purpose for our existence by being just, which, as I explained just now, it's almost always, this is close to always, very close to always possible. And we build our harvest for our souls based on our free will intentions. And as I explained, everyone's is different. So this concept of everyone burning in hell, okay, not to the same extent and not for the same duration. Hell is not eternal always. So, because that would be unfair. It would be unfair. The entire existence is built on justice. And justice, conceptually, philosophically, emanates from compassion. So it's compassion first, then it's the second thing is justice, the third thing is truth. So if you really think about it, without the concept of justice, truth is meaningless. So when you speak the truth, you're actually doing the thing that you're speaking the truth about, justice. So that was a digression. I can make other videos about that. So that's your purpose, to be just to everything. That includes to God. God, there is a God. This is scientific. It is not an unfounded belief. So atheism is baseless. It's baseless. It does not have scientific basis. And I've explained that in my previous videos. So it is a God that has created the entire existence and has created you and everything that's within this existence, including me and you. So for that creation of you, being just to God is to praise Him, to pay Him thanks. When someone brings you a cup of coffee in a restaurant, what do you say? Thank you. When you're a guest at someone's house, they bring you some fruit, they bring you some food. Even when they open the door or close the door, a stranger does that to you at a store, what do you say? Thank you. Those are very small things, right? Opening a door, bringing a cup of water, doing anything for you, right? When someone gives you directions, thank you. You say thank you. As a matter of fact, if you don't, you kind of don't feel right? And that person is like, oh, they weren't really as polite as they should have been. And those are very small acts. Now imagine how much thank you do you owe the entity that created your soul and created all of this amazingly miraculous body that even doctors, after going to medical school for 10, 11, 15, 20 years, if you want to be a neurosurgeon, they still don't know even close to everything about it. They know a minute fraction of what there is to be known. And that's just in medicine. In any field, about from astronomy, which begins with A, to zoology, which ends in Z, and every other major at universities. Biology, chemistry, botany, nanotechnology, real estate, finance, business, all of these majors in universities, right? Veterinary medicine, podiatry, nursing, anything. Any anthropology, geography, history, literature, all of them. We know so little. Even our doctors, PhDs, know very little. So my PhD is in humanities. I don't know everything that has happened to humans in history. Are you kidding me? I don't even know. I know so little. So little. My master's is in economics. Do I know everything about like transactions or what determines the price of something or the supply and demand? Or no, of course not. There's so much unknown. My BS degree is in molecular biology and microbiology. My other BS degree is in liberal studies with a concentration in philosophy. Do I know everything about biology? Of course not. In biology, we only have every living thing. If you count every living thing, from microbiological organisms all the way on to humans. This includes trees, all the animals in land, sea, and air. Everything is only 5%, roughly 5% of all that has existed. The other, roughly 95%, is extinct. Just think about that. Okay? Everything that is alive on Earth right now is about 5% of all living things that have ever lived on Earth. Do we, and even this 5%, do we know them all? Like, does a botanist know every single shrub, every single tree on Earth? Of course not. PhDs focus on one tree or maybe a couple of trees or maybe one chemical reaction within a tree, and they focus on that, and that's their contribution to knowledge. They discover something new. So the point being that the entity that created all of it, and makes it all work and created all the laws, that's the more important one, all the laws that govern the existence. So for example, Einstein, E equals mc squared. That law existed before Einstein discovered it. Everything. If you believe in evolution, okay, fine. It is true. Living things do evolve. Okay, Darwin discovered it, but that was there. The law of evolution was there before Darwin discovered it. E equals mc squared was there before Darwin discovered it. The law of gravity was there, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was Kepler that before he discovered it, that if you double the distance, the gravitation cubes. I believe that's the, if I remember correctly. So, but that was there, okay? And so if you read the book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, Kuhn, he goes through the history of the evolution of science. So in any case, every time a new law is discovered, that law has existed. That law was, things don't come into existence on their own. Things have a maker. So that law was created by the Creator. So the point being that being just to God is giving Him praise and thanks literally infinitely for everything, the complexity of this existence. Whether you want to call it universe, multiverse, whatever. So that's when you wake up, because you exist, you take that first breath when you wake up. So we need to say, thank you, God. Because we didn't die in our sleep. God has deemed that we exist for another breath. Right now that I'm speaking to you, am I sure that I'm going to take my next breath? No, my heart could stop. I don't have any control over that. Of course, what I eat and I exercise, but it still could stop. I could have a blood clot. I could have a number of neurological malfunctions right now. Do you know how many neurons are at work in my brain just to make this video? Do you know how many muscles are at work to make my mouth move, make my tongue move? How my lungs are breathing in and out? All the biochemical reactions that are going, all the DNA replication, transcription of that DNA into mRNA, and then the mRNA translation into proteins. All that is going on, and that's just a little tiny, infinitesimal, almost nothing fraction of all the biochemical reactions that are going on in my body, in your body, every second. And it's all working amazingly, precisely, so that, and the proof is in the pudding. I am here and I'm functioning, right? So that's justice to God. Then the second piece of justice is justice to your environment. So your environment is everything that, the way I define it is everything that's outside of your body. Everything, like even the air, okay? So the air is my environment. I should be just to the air. I shouldn't pollute it if I don't have to. Okay, I have a car. I can't afford an electric car. Okay, so if I could, even the electric cars, there's pollution with them, with the way the lithium is mined or the lithium batteries and all of that. There's issues. So I don't want to get too detailed here. But the point is, I do what I have to do. I have a car that, for example, exudes some NOx. My catalytic converter, my car passes smog. So that's, I obey the law and I do the best that I can not to pollute the air. That's being just to the air. It's also being just to the others who breathe that air. So the table that I have, I should use it judiciously or justly. I shouldn't make it break. Okay? I should use it so it lasts the maximum that it can last. So that's just inanimate things, right? Air is a bunch of molecules. I'm not talking the microorganisms in the air, just the air itself is inanimate. And the table is inanimate. And all the way from, like, I'm not going to talk about microbes. The microbes, if I don't have to, kill them, I shouldn't, right? But we don't see those. Let's talk about things that we actually see with these eyes. Ants, roaches, spiders, and then all the way on up. If I see something crawling, I should be just to it. What is the just thing to do to that ant? To try to, if it's bothering you, if it doesn't bother you, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Coexist with it. But if it's a type that, for example, bites, or if you're allergic to ants, or things of that nature, for as much as is possible for you, try to trap it in a very calm and in a very fair and in a very good way. Like what I do is put a jar on it and slip a paper under the jar, and then I open my balcony door and I basically put it on the balcony. If it comes back in, I'll do the same. But I don't think I've ever seen the same ant twice. I don't think so. Okay? So it goes and does its own thing. But I don't hurt it if I don't have to. Okay? Sometimes there are situations that you have to. I'm not talking about those situations. Okay? So, but if you don't have to, for as much as possible, you are fair and just to your environment. So first to God, then if you have a pet, you need to take good care of it. Like, for example, my wife and I are going on a trip. We have 2 plants. We took utmost care within our rationality to take care of those plants while we are gone. They depend on us. They have souls. Plants and animals have souls. So they actually feel things. So my PhD dissertation was on near-death experiences. That's when I say science has proven it. Look up Dr. Mary Neal, one of thousands of examples. Dr. Mary Neal, an orthopedic surgeon. And I'm paraphrasing her quote. She says, there's so much evidence. And this is an orthopedic surgeon that was not that religious before her near-death experience. She has an amazing near-death experience, NDE. Amazing. She's just one of them. I'm just giving you one example. There are thousands of others, all on Earth. So, all over the Earth, in different cultures. The first recorded NDE was recorded by Plato. Plato talked about near-death experiences. Yes, thousands of years ago. So, it's historical. It's a historical phenomenon that is not talked about. So, Dr. Mary Neal's quote, orthopedic surgeon, she says, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember her verbatim exact quote, But this is the concept that she conveys with her statement. She says that there's so much evidence that our soul continues to live that at this point, if somebody doesn't believe in the existence of our soul, in the continuation of our soul after the physical death of our body, either they are ignorant, they don't know, they haven't studied the science, or they are arrogant. They know, but they won't believe. Either ignorant or arrogant. And there's so much scientific evidence. Just look up near-death experiences on YouTube. It's available to you all. Watch it for yourselves. Okay, so our soul continues. So be just to God. That's the first duty. Be just to your environment. That includes all the humans around you. So when someone is right, acknowledge that they are right. That's justice. Do not argue with them. Right? Now, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. I make many a day, but I try to make it right. Okay? That's called justice to your environment. Plants, animals, air, inanimate to animate objects, humans, in a conversation. When you talk to people, when you say something, give them a chance to respond. Do not interrupt them. That's justice in a conversation. That cleanses your soul. That means you are being just. You are not committing a sin. This is a very general outline. Very general outline. Okay? There is much more details and nuances, but this is a very big picture that I'm painting for you here. Okay? So the first thing that you have to be just to is God, because God created everything, including you. So if you are not just to God, then your life begins to unravel in ways that you know not. Because, and I have other videos on this, if you really think about it, there is very little of your life that you actually control. You control, yes, what you eat, how much you sleep, whether you exercise or not, but you don't control if, for example, when you step outside of your apartment or house, you don't control what happens to you, what other people do to you. You don't control them. You know what does? Your intentions and whether you are just to God and to your environment, and thirdly, to yourself. God, environment, yourself. 3 justice duties that we all have. So what that means is, so the main contributor, so if you've had a course in statistics, you don't even need to have a course in statistics, but there is, an academic, dependent variable, independent variable. So I won't get into that. It's cause and effect. So the main cause of what happens to you, how your environment treats you, right? Remember? Everything around you is your environment, right? So the main cause of how your environment treats you, this means how the inanimate objects react to you. Do you stub your toe on a leg of a table? Or whether a dog scares you or even bites you? Or whether a person is hostile towards you? Or the reverse, you don't stub your toe, the dog, either you don't see a dog, or if you do, the dog is friendly towards you or indifferent, it just goes on its way, or a person is peaceful towards you or indifferent. The main contributor of how your environment treats you is how you intend, whether you are just in your intentions, first and foremost to God, secondly to your environment, and thirdly to yourself. So, what does justice to yourself mean? Treat your body right. Treat your mind right. Don't drink alcohol. Don't do drugs. Don't do things that ruin your body and ruin your mind for as much as you can. Listen, if you live in a village and there's no gym near you, you can't go to a gym, but you can still do push-ups. You can still walk. Okay? I myself am guilty of not doing enough exercise. Okay, it's not like I am, Arthur Schopenhauer said, one of his quotes, I teach sainthood, but I myself am no saint. Because he was he did a lot of things that he shouldn't do according to his own philosophy. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying I'm like that. I don't, but regarding exercising, I need to get better. I used to, but I don't as much anymore. But, my wife and I are starting. So, in any case, but I know I need to, right? I know I need to. The fact is, you need to think correctly about these things, and then you need to put them to action. And nobody's perfect. Know that. But thinking correctly is where it all begins. So the purpose of existence is to be just, and justice is first and foremost to God by paying him thanks, praising him for his stature, all the goodness that's in you, in everything, comes from God. The fact that all mothers are kind to their offspring. Let's make that more precise. Almost all mothers. And that again comes from genetic and, nature and nurture of the mother. And that again comes from their ancestors and their environment. But in animals, right, is almost totality of mothers are kind to their offspring. Even a mosquito, when it lays its eggs, it chooses the best place. It tries to choose the best place. It does it the best way. And all the way on up to, dogs and cats and deer and tigers and lions and cheetahs and leopards and pigs and mice and elephants and whales and hyenas and monkeys and apes and humans. Fish, octopus, right? They are all kind to their offspring. That comes from God, from God's kindness. It would not exist were it not for God's kindness, for God's compassion. Hence, and the concept of justice itself comes from God's compassion. Everything, as I've said in my previous videos, the concepts that we think come from God's creation. We could not think them if God had not created them. The concepts, because your thoughts are made up of concepts. You could not think if it were not for God's compassion. It's infinite, God's compassion. So we need to praise God just for what it is. God doesn't have a gender. He or she doesn't make sense for God. It's an undefined by human. That's a different discussion. I won't get into it because this is already 39 minutes. So, for God's stature, we need to first praise God for just for what it is. then how grand and how compassionate and kind God is. We need to praise Him. Then thank Him for creating us and creating everything. Stars and moon and everything, the environment. Everything but you, everything around you is your environment. Okay? And so that's number one. Number two, be just to your environment. Everything. Be just to it. Be fair. Number three, be just to yourself. To your body, to your own soul, to your own mind. Justice to your soul is to not commit the intentions and mainly actions but actions are judged by their intentions behind them. See, that's how God judges them. Because God is unfoolable. Unfoolable. God is perfect. You're not, but God is. So, be just. Cleanse your soul, because this life is temporary. It doesn't matter if you have 5 houses, 50 houses, 500 houses, 1 car, 10 cars, 50 cars. If you drive an old beat up Ford or Chevy or Toyota, or you have 50 Lamborghinis, 50 Ferraris, Bentleys, Aston Martins, all these other fancy cars, or Learjets, planes, this, that, the other. If you drink lobster with every meal and the best steaks, or you're just eating, the most, bread and beans and, chilies and, all that stuff, soups. It doesn't matter. This physical body will die. So refrain from sins, be just to your soul, cleanse it. That's our purpose. The most important way to achieve that is by being just to everything, and that leads to cleansing your soul. Hopefully, and then your soul will live eternity in peace, as opposed to living some part of eternity in turmoil and agony. And that extent of eternity will depend on how unjust you were in this physical world. It's all about justice. It's all about justice. Okay? So that's the purpose of existence. And let's get real about this. Be real to thine own self. Be true. Tell the truth to yourself. Know the truth. At least know it. You don't always have to advocate it or talk about it, but know it. Try to know the truth. Okay? And be just. Then that has a snowball effect. You start with the smallest things, and God will make you more just. Once you go a millimeter, a millionth of an inch towards God will embrace you and will gravitate you towards it. So be confident in that. That is the algorithm of the universe. Be just. Thank you, and until next time, thanks for listening. I hope these talks are beneficial to you. Leave comments. I'm always willing, of course I'm willing to learn. I will change. I will do my best to effectuate, to implement your comments, if you choose to make some comments. So thank you so much. And until next time, bye.